Hello everyone and welcome to the Africam show. So exciting that we're starting here at Old Donyo this time round. As usual, thoroughly excited to be here with you for the next half an hour. If this is the first time that you're joining us, this is an opportunity to go through all the different Africams and have me here in case you have any questions. And we are always live and interactive, always wild. Always live, always wild. So you can send through whatever you like, questions and comments. You can let me know how you're enjoying the show this afternoon. I have just got a glass of water this time round. Nothing too exciting. But what is exciting is spending some time with some elephant bulls. I was lucky enough to be watching the cameras a lot more often recently. And I must say, I always knew that the Old Donyo camera was just, one of the favorite children. But after watching it for some time, the clarity and the color is just stunning. Now you can see that the bull on the left has one very long tusk, and the other one almost looks like it's fallen out as opposed to have broken, or maybe it's broken very, very close to the face. That's the only other thing I could imagine, because it's almost entirely gone. I mean, we might be able to have a closer look. Now that would have been very, very, very painful if it had broken off. But I'm just thinking maybe it hasn't actually... Oh, that's a nice view. You can see there's nothing in that space. So there's a couple things that could have happened there. One, it could have broken off. It could have fallen off as well, or fallen out. Or this bull could have been born with only one tusk developing. It definitely can happen. But if we get a closer look, we might be able to investigate a little better. And our first hello is through, and it's Bob from Kalamazoo. And you say, "Good day, Trish. Let the show begin." It is beginning. Bob, do you have your Diet Coke? As I said, I've just got water. Sometimes, or the majority of the time, I enjoy the Africam show with a cup of tea, which I think is very nice. Grey Wolf 714, you say you love Ellies. I know I do love Ellies too. Probably my favorite animal to spend time with in the bush. It's beautiful to stumble across any animal, and even more so when you've worked hard to track and find an animal. But even still, spending time with elephants is my favorite. Now this Ellie with the single tusk, when elephants are very young, before their tusks come out, they have little things called tushes that are in place. And it's kind of like a milk tooth, because remember, a tusk is just a modified incisor tooth. It's kind of like a milk version of it, or a deciduous tooth, and it's called a tusher. And those tushes, they provide direction for the growth of the tusks. So we don't ever get to see the tushes. They're just existing underneath the skin of the elephant. There we go. So it could be that he had a problem that resulted in him never forming a tusher. Or perhaps he has a tusher and he doesn't have a tusk on that side. If it was just the tusher and the tusk didn't form, then maybe it just fell out, because the tusher doesn't last for very long. Once the tusk comes in, the tusher is pushed out. Well, it's not really pushed out, it's dissolved. Otherwise, we'd find lots of little tushers all over the place. But I don't know if I'm just getting an idea of this, but it kind of looks saggy on this side. So I would say that maybe the tusk had fallen out, because it's also bulky enough to look like a tusk was once there. Casper's Third Ghost, you say, "Good morning, Trishala from Milwaukee. You've got your water on hand." Oh, me too. Very nice. Jurel, you say you gotcha just in the nick of time and you're not missing a moment with me. Thank you. And the wild and wonderful animals. Of course, who would have even questioned it? You have your dark roast of Java. Ada, Iowa, 1999, you say, Team Ada here from Cedar Falls in Iowa saying hi, about to start our breakfast omelette. Oh, that's lovely. Timber Grace, you say, good morning, chilly in Minnesota. The coffee is hot. Nice. And you're excited for the show. Great. And Bob, yes, you do. Of course you do. Have your Diet Coke. So just having, or just kind of rounding up our discussion on that elephant that had just the one tusk, how would that affect him? He probably won't be able to perform as well in terms of combat or fighting for cows and estrus and asserting his dominance. He wouldn't be able to do it as well as an animal with two tusks. But as you can see, he's big, he's impressive, and he's probably still going to be mating with females. It's just a matter of if there are other males around, he might not win once they compete. But that one tusk is very impressive. April Owl, you say, good morning, glad to be here watching the elephants. Yes, elephants are going to be the stars today, I think. Ada, Iowa, 1999, you say you love breakfast with all of us. Thank you so much. Ooh, we've just moved over now to Olifant's River, but just as the elephant at El Doño picked up his head, we kind of saw something. It looks like the tusk broke off right very close to his face. But now we have a younger bull. Well, actually, it's difficult to tell from this distance, but he looks younger than the bull we were looking at, and he certainly has two tusks. Now, the other cool thing about tusks, and sometimes we see it, but I've seen it more often on cows than I have on bulls, is that they get little notches in their tusks. And that's from repeatedly using a certain tusk. Maybe it's the left or the right, so they're kind of left-tusked or right-tusked or left-handed, right-handed kind of thing, which means that they use one side more than the other, and then they get these little notches. And those form from ripping bark, from pushing down trees, anything where they basically wear down one tusk more than they do the other. Rolling Trouble, you've made it, you've joined us. You say, time to brew with some coffee. You know, one of these days, I'm going to have a cup of coffee here. Speaking of coffee, where's Aussie Jan 2? She's always one of the first to say hello with her coffee. Maybe she'll join us a little later. Now, a lot of the areas have started to receive a little bit of rainfall. You know, not the big rains, not the wet season rains, but some rainfall definitely. And things are pretty juicy. Not as if they ever properly dried up in the first place, because we had such an epic wet season last year. But things are starting to get nice and juicy, even more so. And all the animals, I say look happy, but I can't say that really because I can't make a judgment, and that's subjective. But when resources are abundant, you get this feeling in the bush that nobody cares or needs to care for anything. Nobody needs to want for anything. Everything is just there. And now he's most definitely showing us how we know that he's a bull. He was urinating as well, and it reminded me of something that I had learned quite some time back about the time it takes to empty one's bladder. So apparently some testing had been done, and all mammals take roughly 21 seconds to empty their bladder. I challenge you, but you don't need to report back to me. But I challenge you to count next time. It's an interesting thing because obviously the size of the bladder, and how can we say this across all mammal species when there's so much variation in the size and shapes of mammals. But the size of the bladder is related to the size of the animal. You know, it's all relative. And on top of that, fluid dynamics still work the same across all mammal species. And apparently 21 seconds is the number we have come up with. So, but also that's full bladder. Full bladder, I might add. A couple times, perhaps TMI, a couple times I have measured. I've gotten other people as well to do it, and 21 seconds really, or about, comes out on top. It's interesting when we get to learn in this way, especially when we get to learn about something across the board, across an entire group of animals. It's so difficult in science, and especially in biology, to be able to say the words always or never. Because there is, and I'm just about to say the word always, there's always an exception. But that's what makes it interesting. Because those exceptions still serve the same function. Everybody needs to eat, but not everybody has teeth, or the same type of teeth. Everything is modified to suit their particular lifestyle. And speaking of teeth and feeding, while we're watching this elephant bull, you can see that he's going after these grasses. And as we get into the wet season and more rain starts to fall, grasses will make up the majority of elephants' diet. In the dry season rather, the majority of their diet is made up of leaves and bark, roots as well, but not very many grasses. In the wet season, it's majority grasses. Yes, foliage too, but the majority is grasses. And of course marulas. We can't forget marulas, but unfortunately there's only so many marulas to go around, which means that it can't make up a significant portion of their diet, but you would be pressed to find a pile of elephant dung in the height of the wet season without marulas in it. And elephant's dung also change with the seasons, as you would imagine, because their diet is changing. So in the wet season, there's a lot more moisture, not only from a lot more water being around in terms of them drinking, but also a lot more moisture in their vegetation. So their dung ends up being soft and less fibrous as well, because they're not eating as much of that plant bark or tree bark. Now in the dry season, elephant dung is so fibrous and very red, and the red comes from the cambium that they eat. So when they strip bark off of trees, they're not really going after the outer bark, which is what we see, because as you can imagine, it's really dry. But there's a few layers. So there's the outer bark, there's the inner bark, and then there's what we consider wood, you know, like your firewood, come from inside the middle of the tree. Like the heartwood or the xylem wood. That's in the middle, and then you've got the outer bark, the inner bark. Now between the inside wood and the outer and inner bark, there's a layer called the cambium. And the cambium is a layer of active cells. And those cells can produce xylem going in and phloem going out, or cells rather. So it's the origin of where those cells come from. So it's the only like juicy active layer of the bark, and that's exactly what, or of the tree rather, and that's exactly what the elephants are after. And it just so happens that cambium is a reddy orange color. So elephant dung takes on that color as well during the dry season. Oh, goodness, I was, my messages got stuck, and now suddenly I've got all your messages again. I was feeling lonely. Kauru, you say hi, Trishala. Hi, Kauru. Lagomorphobic, you say you think that was the elephant bull who seemed to be in a lot of pain for some time. He kept touching the part where his tusk was with the tip of his trunk and spraying it with water. You're talking about the Old Donyo one. Well, that's really interesting because just as we're back at Old Donyo now, but just as we moved across the Olifants River to have a look at the other elephant bull, this elephant bull, we were nice up and close, and it lifted up its head, and you could actually see that it was a broken tusk. And what you're saying confirms it if you've seen this behavior where he's trying to spray water on it. Because a tusk, because it is a modified tooth, it has dentin, it has enamel, and it has a pulp cavity. And that cavity is full of blood vessels and nerves. But as you know with your tooth, if you chip the edges of your tooth, it doesn't really hurt. It just feels awkward in your mouth. But if you chip or break your tooth and the pulp is revealed, that pain is crazy. And if he's broken his tusk so close to his face, his pulp would have 100% been affected. That would have caused so much pain. Thank you so much, Lagomorphobic. There we go. For bringing that up because you really confirmed my suspicion. Dear NC, you say a little late, but here with your coffee. I'm telling you, next time I'm going to have coffee too. We have a question with no name. Please don't be shy. You can tell us your name, but if you don't want to, that's okay. But you'd like to know, apart from the obvious, are there ways to tell the difference between male and female elephants? And you say you're drinking coffee near London. Love to hear it. Thank you very much. There are other ways. For one, males, okay, we should talk about adult males and females, because if you're not looking at adult male and female elephants, then it can be really difficult, and it's just best to look between the legs. Otherwise, it can be difficult. But we'll chat about that in a moment. If we're talking about just adults, adult bulls are much taller, about 1.5 meters taller than females. And on top of that, they continue to grow for quite some time. Females seem to plateau. The other thing to look out for is the shape of the back. It's unreliable again, because when females fall pregnant, especially for the first time, the weight of the fetus can sometimes cause a bit of a curve in the spine. This is not a bad thing. This doesn't hurt the animal at all. It's just the way her body changes once she falls pregnant. And so you'll see a more obvious curve on a female's back than you would in a male's, but again, that's really unreliable. The other thing we can look for is the shape of the forehead. Adult males have quite a rounded forehead, while adult females have more of a square forehead. The reason I say it's unreliable is because sometimes females have less of a square forehead than other females, and sometimes the males have more of a square forehead than other males. So look at his forehead right now. You can see it's nice and rounded. With females, I would expect to almost see it look like a table edge. You know, it's very, 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 very sharp. Ah, and we have a game drive vehicle. Everyone wants to come and see the elephants. I mean, I would love to be in that game drive vehicle, honestly. I haven't been to Old Donyo before, so it would be wonderful. So apart from the obvious, you can have a look at the size of the bull, or the elephant rather. If it looks very, very big, probably an elephant bull. If it's a rounded forehead, probably an elephant bull. If he doesn't have pronounced breasts, probably an elephant bull. All elephants have nipples, but females, obviously, they have very obvious breasts. But males don't. Apart from those things, you can look at the behavior. Females or cows are always with their herd. It's always females and their offspring. They're not ever alone. If you're unsure, wait, because there might be a female that arrives at the waterhole first, or maybe she's just in the bush where you're looking and the others are around. Just wait. If she's on her own, or if the elephant is on its own, it's most likely to be a male than a female. Females are always in the herd, females and offspring together. Males can also form groups, bachelor herds of course, but you're not going to see youngsters with elephant bulls. Never going to see a calf. If you see a calf, you can be sure that the adult you're looking at is the female. Another thing behavior-wise is that young male elephants, even if they're still with the herd, they tend to be a little bit more showy and aggressive than females. But again, that's unreliable way, because one, what showy and aggressive looks like to you could be different to what it looks like for me. So that's why I always say it's always best to just look between the legs, and then you know for sure. And he doesn't have to have his penis extended for you to see that. You just have to see the penis sheath and you'd be able to tell. Females obviously don't have that. April Owl, you say, thank you for the 21-second pee information. I think you say, very interesting about the time it takes for emptying a bladder. Maybe older types may take a little longer, not as strong a flow. Well, that's where fluid dynamics and muscle contractions and all those things come in. But I'm glad you appreciated that comment, April Owl. Ooh, Jirel, you're saying, Trish, I've often wondered about an Ellie male's very low-hanging penis. All right, so this is where it's going, everybody. And it thinks the poor penis is hanging so low and therefore very vulnerable to being bitten or stung. I wish I could comment, but I would imagine, for one, elephants are hardy creatures, and there's no reason to exclude any part of their body from that description. They also have incredible control over their penis, so you might see even them lifting it up against their body, and yes, it may be vulnerable, but there are few things that would be able to attack it, I suppose, significantly enough for it to be damaged. But a sting, that's gonna hurt. But it is, I've seen them drag it on the floor before in areas where there's thorns and, paper thorns and grasses and clusters of acacia thorns, but it doesn't seem to bother them at all. So I would say that just like an elephant is a hardy animal, so is their penis. Kaoru, you say, how is it possible to be the same amount of time to empty a full bladder when the animals are all different sizes? Well, that's just it. It is the same time, and that's because the size of the bladder and then also all the openings, all the valves that are associated with moving urine from the bladder out to the point where they can be excreted, all of those are relative as well. So for a mongoose, those openings are going to be very small, and fluid can only move at a certain pace through those openings. And their bladder is very small, so the time is actually the same. Where an elephant, bladder is very big, animal is very big, but so are all the openings that allow the fluid to move out. And yeah, it's the same time. And then you say, Kaoru, you say, and then the birds who are even tinier. Well, Kaoru, now you've opened another box. Birds don't urinate. I'm very sorry. Obviously, I had urination or peeing on the brain, and then it just came out of my mouth. Kaoru, birds don't urinate. Not all birds, at least. Have you seen a bird urinate? Maybe you've seen an ostrich urinate. That's the only one here in Africa that will urinate. All the other birds excrete their... there we go. We're looking at some birds. Hello, flamingos here at Comfort's Dam. all other birds will excrete uric acid in their poop. You know that white bit? When you look at bird poop, there's the darker bit and then there's that white bit. That white bit is uric acid. That's their urination or equivalent of it. So this particular experiment does not include birds. Oh, lovely. Thank you, Kelly, for giving us your name. You asked a really interesting question there, but you said you forgot to add your name. But it's Kelly outside London, still drinking your coffee. Very nice. It's kind of interesting when you think about, well, I mean, it's all interesting. Birds, and you'd assume that they do urinate, right? But when you think about it, have you ever seen a bird urinate? And only then does it really come to mind. And I hope, Karu, that I told you something that maybe was new. Or maybe you were talking about ostriches. But also, Karu, that study was done on mammals, specifically for mammals. But I'm lucky that we got to talk about birds and urination as well. Oh, look, we've got a sacred ibis in the back there. Just chilling with the flamingos. Okay, let us head over to Rosie's pan. I do love Rosie's pan. Here we go. Got some warthogs. The water doesn't look fantastic at Rosie's at the moment. Seems to be quite a lot of growth, both algal and floral, if I could say that. Rolling trouble. Yeah, exactly. Rolling trouble says, oh, morning piece of... Can't even say it. Rolling trouble says, oh, morning penis talk done. Yeah, tick that off your list, Rolling trouble. You don't have to go about doing it yourself. It's done for you. Jirel, you say thanks. You kind of thought that the question was silly, but your answer makes sense. I mean, it's not a silly question. I remember having the same kind of concern, the first time I saw it with elephants dragging their penis along the ground. It looks like it's gonna hurt, but clearly it doesn't. I mean, I can't say if a thorn has ever actually been stuck in one and stuff like that, but there may have been cases, but you'll find that that kind of evidence would be anecdotal. So, talking to guides and things, we might be able to get more information in that particular regard. It's all interesting things, and it's what I love about mammals. Well, I mean, I love all of them, but when we talk about mammals and we ask questions about mammals, they feel very much like ourselves, because essentially the parts of their body plan is just like ours, but slightly modified along the way. So I think we have a particular affection, maybe even a hint of, reflection when we see mammals. And that makes us feel, a little closer to them in a way. Casper's third ghost, you say, wow, you have a 33-year-old parrot and I never knew that he didn't urinate. Well, Casper's third ghost, have you ever seen it? That would be helpful. But again, Casper's third ghost, we're at Tau now, by the way. We're watching some elephants and some guinea fowl. The thing is that if we don't think about it, it just doesn't occur to us that birds wouldn't urinate. And I think it just slips under the radar, until you start thinking about it. And all of a sudden, there you go. Uric acid is that little white bit in their poop. And now, to end off our fantastic conversations, this Africam show, we are going full circle, and we're back with some elephants at Tau. And luckily for us, they are very decent. But now you can take off your urination chats, you can take off your penis chats, because we're done. I hope you learned something, I hope you giggled a little bit, and I hope that you have a larger smile on your face because it is World Mental Health Day. And I hope that this whole experience made you feel a little lighter and a little happier and a little bit more connected to the African bush. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your questions and comments. I'll see you again next week or on Thursday.